Folks, I'm here with Sergeant Todd Ory of the Calcasieu Parish Sheriff's Office. He's helping us out here in Legally Armed America to go over a weapon that he's actually very familiar with, the IWI Tavor. Todd, can you tell us some of the unique characteristics about this gun for people that don't know what is involved with the quote-unquote bullpup design of today?
Sure, Paul. These things are neat. They've been around for a long time. Probably most people think bullpup. They think of the Steyr AUG. You see them a lot in the movies. But a bullpup design puts all your working parts behind your trigger group. Where most firearms, you have a stock and then all your working parts and your fire control group are located up front. And what this does, it allows for a longer overall barrel length with still maintaining a very sharp weapon. And this is advantageous if you're trying to use it inside of a structure or a home, or if you're trying to use it in a vehicle, you know, to where it can control very easy. And typically what happens in law enforcement circles and military circles is we take the traditional AR-15 type rifles and we make them shorter by cutting the barrel down, so it makes them more maneuverable. And that helps in that aspect, but what we lose is our ballistic capabilities of the round. The 5.56 or 2.23 round, depending on which vernacular you want to use, counts on velocity to be effective. And so when we cut that barrel down, we start losing velocity. And we're dealing with a very light projectile anyhow, usually somewhere in the neighborhood of about 45 to up to about 75 grains. And when we take the velocity out of there, we've lost a lot of what the gun's capable of doing. So with this bullpup platform, we maintain a short overall weapon dimension, but still have a long barrel. This weapon here has a 16-inch barrel, so we still maximize the capability of that 5.56
So
round.
We don't compromise the velocity at all with this shorter weapon overall length?
Not at all.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the history of this weapon. It's an Israeli-made weapon. How did it wind up here on the shores of the United States?
Well, when they started off, the Israelis were looking at something that would be more conducive to where they saw their future taking them as far as battles, which were in urban conflicts. And so they wanted an overall smaller design, so they looked at the bullpup. And they looked at numerous designs that were out there, the Steyrs and different companies produce these things. They've been around for a long time, but
now they've been using the M4 style weapon up to this point, right?
Right. They were using M16 and M4 style weapons, and so about 1995 they started looking at these things and making up prototypes and trying to refine them and stuff. And about in 2000 they actually went out to the soldiers in the IDF, and this is their standard issue weapon now. They've gotten away from the M16 M4 style completely. Okay.
Now, one thing we did for this demonstration is we wanted to make this thing basically operate and function like the Israelis designed it to function. So we actually put the Mepro 21 optics on it, just so that we could get kind of the same feel and function of what they expected it to run with, instead of putting an aim point or an EOTech or something like that on it. So we're going to try that out, and that's something kind of new to you too, right, Todd?
Right. I've never used the Mepro, so this is my first time to actually look at the site, and thus far I have to say I'm impressed.
All right, well, we're going to give it a run. Okay, one of the biggest things that people like to do is compare the Tavor and your basic M4 style weapon. Show us the obvious differences and then some of the more subtle differences of these particular weapons.
Okay, well, obviously, Paul, you can see the length difference, and this is with the stock collapsed all the way. Even somebody with my short stature, this is too close. I can't effectively run the weapon with the stock this close. So I'd have to extend it out. So if we looked at it extended out to about where I would run it, you're looking at this much difference.
That's a good 8 inches or so.
And in order to get this weapon the same size as this, to where I can maneuver it inside of a vehicle or inside of a house or a building, I have to shorten the barrel down. And we already talked about what that does to our ballistics, and that we want to try and avoid that, because the velocity is what makes the .223 caliber effective. When we take away the velocity, we're just still dealing with a .22 caliber round. So that's the most obvious differences is in the length. Also, we look at where your basic AR-15 style rifle, everything is up front here. So you have a stock which has no really working parts besides your buffer spring and such in the back. all your fire control parts are up here and your bolt and everything's up here. One thing a lot of people do like about the AR system is if I'm doing a reload, it's two separate movements, so I can drop my magazine with this hand while this hand is retrieving an extra mag to feed in. So a lot of people are critical of the reloads on a bullpup design because of the way this has to be done. I have to release magazine here, get my old magazine out, get my new magazine in, and then release my bolt here. So it requires this movement, which is not required in the M4. I can go straight to my magazine. But if we look at that setup, it's common amongst most European weapons. I mean, if you look at H&K, if everybody's familiar with the H&K design, when the magazine runs dry, the bolt doesn't hold open on the last round. On this rifle, it does. So what I would have to do is pull my working parts to the rear, lock them open, magazine out, new magazine in, and working parts forward. So we're really not looking at any more than we're, steps-wise than we're looking at with most European-style weapons. And so I don't find it bad. Each to his own, but I don't really understand why people criticize it on the mag reloads. Is it a little slower? Sure, but I think with time and practice, you get used to what you're using. You could effectively change a magazine in this just about as quick as you could here.
Yep, that's good. And fire whenever you are ready. While this wasn't Todd's first time shooting the Tavor rifle, it was, however, his first time shooting the Mepro 21 day-night illuminated reflex sight, so we wanted to give him a little bit of practice before we really put him to the test. The rifle showed no real signs of recoil while being fired. This possibly due to the weight of the gun, which was right at about 8 pounds. One of the main complaints of the Tavor rifle is the overall feel of the trigger. Because of the linkage between the trigger and the rearward bolt behind it, it's got somewhat of a spongy feel to it, but as you can see, it's got a pretty decent and short reset to it. The 16-inch 1-7 twist barrels seem to really do the trick as far as keeping Todd on target at both 25 and 50 yards. All right, Todd, you had a chance to run a Tavor. Tell us what you thought.
Paul, I'll tell you what, I'm impressed with it. It's nice handling, everything's in tight. Once I got my hinge point on the rifle, when I threw it up, it was right where I needed it to be. Moving, running with it, it feels like an extension of your body.
What's the weight in the back of it do whenever you're maneuvering and running like that? How does that differentiate versus an M4 style weapon?
Well, being the weight's in the back, it's closer to our body, so it's easier to handle because we're stronger. The closer we get to our bodies, we're stronger, and so with the weight being between this hand and this shoulder, it makes it very easy to maneuver. In fact, if I needed my offhand to do anything, I could actually use my offhand if I had to open a door or move something out of my way, and not sacrifice my good balance hold on the weapon. Okay.
Now, as far as acquiring your sight, I know you're dealing with a different set of sights here, but did it feel like that you had to work harder to acquire your sight? It was somewhat the same as your standard weapon?
No, I found it very easy. Once you get your hinge point where when you bring it up, the sight fell right there. It was easy to acquire with both eyes open. It makes for very quick, shooting.
Now, a lot of things have been said negatively about the trigger. I tend to agree. It's a spongy feeling trigger. However, you didn't seem to have any problem as far as it reacting to you and whatnot. Tell me what your thoughts were on the trigger.
Well, it's no match trigger by any means. That's obvious. Standard AR's got a much better trigger, but you got to realize your trigger's up here, and so you have a linkage that's got to connect everything back here, and so you're losing a little bit. But I don't find it to be awful. And we got to remember, it's a battle rifle. It was not set up to be a precision rifle. Right. It's a battle rifle, and I find it to be adequate. I'm not going to say it's a great trigger, but I find it to be adequate.
Well, and speaking of the action being behind the trigger, another perceived knock. Again, I think a lot of these negatives you read about are probably perception more than it is actual somebody using the weapon and actually commenting on it. But as far as the brass ejecting closer to your face, did you see any kind of problems with that?
No. It seemed to be throwing it straight out to the side or maybe even a little bit in front of me. I did not transition over to my left hand, but I felt like if I needed to, I could. you know, and you can put a slight cant on that rifle instead of bringing it up and leaving it vertical. If I put a slight cant on it, it's going to keep it away from my face, and I can use it in, you know, in an emergency, or if I have to shoot around a barricade on that particular side, I can do that.
Now, probably one of the most, other than the trigger being for the action, one of the most obvious things about this thing is mags, the mag change. Obviously, you're instead of being right in front of or below your action, or your trigger rather, you're behind it, or well behind it actually. That didn't seem to affect you that much. I guess mentally, if you prepare yourself and you know where you're going and you know where your mag is and where you have to change, it didn't seem like that caused you any problems.
It didn't, Paul, and I don't have a whole lot of time behind the rifle. I think if you spent some time and got to know it, it would be, you know, much smoother than I was able to do it. But I didn't find it to be cumbersome.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't cumbersome, and everything, you know, your bolt release and everything's right there. So you got your mag release, you go your mag in, and you bump this, and that sends your bolt forward. So it's not like I was having to move my hands to and from the front to the back of the rifle to manipulate it. So everything was close right there, and it felt convenient.
Okay. We come back, we're going to show what comes in the box, and we're also going to show you a real quick takedown of this particular weapon. Okay, one of the things that I was kind of impressed with, Todd, was what came with the gun as far as unpacking the gun. It doesn't come with a PMag, it comes with IWI's very own 30 round mag, but the cleaning kit and the manual along with the magazine, to me, were very impressive. Can you go into a little bit more detail about those?
Sure, Paul. First thing that struck me is when I looked at the manual, how detailed it was. You know, when it shows you how to take things down, everything that they're discussing in the directions is highlighted in red, and it's very broken down to where even an idiot like me can understand it. A lot of times when we get new firearms, you know, you want to jump straight into them to try and take them down, and then we're trying to back up and figure out manuals, but this thing just really makes it easy. And the thing that surprised me the most about it was the cleaning kit. When I opened that thing up and I saw what all come with this cleaning kit, if you had to buy this stuff separately, it would probably cost you $50 or better. I mean, it comes with the cleaning rods with the jag tips, comes with a chamber brush, comes with just a general purpose brush to sweep away burnt powder and such. Comes with an oiler bottle, needle nose oiler bottle. Comes with sling swivels and a sight adjustment tool. On this thing, if you look, it's got quick detach points to where we can mount our slings, so that's what those are. Got a sight adjustment tool with it. A standard bore brush, and then they have this brush which is used to clean out the receiver once you pull the bolt out of the thing. It's used to kind of get all the residue out of there. So I was pretty impressed with the cleaning kit that came with this thing.
Well, speaking of taking it down, can you break it down real quick and show us how easily this thing is actually taken down?
Sure, Paul. Naturally, we've looked at this thing a half a dozen times or better to make sure it's empty, but for our viewers' sake, we're going to show them that we do have an empty chamber, no magazine in the firearm. It's important first we want to keep it cocked because we want the hammer in the rear position. I'm just going to use a cartridge and press this detent out on the back of the stock. Your pins have detents in them here that keep them from going anywhere, so you don't have to worry about losing them. And then we just pull out our bolt carrier assemblies with our recoil spring and everything, and so that's all there. Once we have it down to here, this pin pushes out the side. There we go. So this pin drops out, then our bolt comes out along with firing pin and firing pin spring. It's a long stroke gas, so this is your gas piston. This is what the gas impinges upon to operate the bolt, where AR system uses direct gas, so we don't have this. And if you notice, we've shot this rifle quite a bit, and it's really not dirty. You don't have that carbon fouling and stuff that you do on the AR systems, which feed right back into this and dirty it up. And then if we want to pull our trigger assembly out, we just flip the rifle over and we push these two pins here. Well, got a little grease on my hands. We'll pull those out this side. And there's our hammer pack that contains our sear and everything else in there. And that's all there is to it. You can reach your muzzle from here, so you clean it, you know, from breech to muzzle like you would any other rifle.
Pretty easy, right?
It is. It's very easy. 3 little pins. You don't have to worry about losing the pins. It doesn't take any tools. A cartridge or a small screwdriver, or maybe even a finger after the rifle's broken in well, you could get those pins loose, and that's all there is to it.
Now that Todd was familiar with both the rifle and the sights, it was time for him to run and gun with it the way the rifle was intended to be used.
Move it!
Well, Todd, tell us your thoughts about the Tavor overall, just in general. What did you think?
Overall, Paul, I was quite impressed with the thing. It handles very well. It was not hard as far as manipulating the reloads. So I kind of thought it might have been, being somewhat new to it. I think it's competitively priced with the other bullpups out there, and I think it's a more modern design. I'm very impressed with it.
Now, if you had your choice between an M4 and this gun, which one would you grab first?
You know what? Depending on the area I had to operate in, I got a lot of time with the AR-15 type platform, but given the chance to become more familiar with that rifle, I would consider that a go-to rifle without a doubt.
Sounds good. Sergeant Todd Ory, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I enjoyed it.
Sure.